I feel like I get I understand a bit better as to the United States' position on Haiti, knowing the U.S. and how the U.S. has operated towards other nations and economic ideologies. Clearly, what the U.S. does not want. So, from the establishment neoliberal perspective, right? They don't want two things. The first thing, they don't want Haiti to become like a Cuba, right? They don't want
Precisely.
a socialist or a communist economy there. The US has spent so many decades under with this ideology and going into proxy wars with an ideology of no socialism, no communism, capitalism only, right? So capitalism is like a religion to our country's leaders and to the military industrial complex. So that's one. The second thing is not wanting Haiti to reel into an unstable situation because Haiti is very close to us. We have a lot of Haitians that then flood into the country. And whenever you have a dire situation where things are suddenly unstable and there's a civil war, you're going to get a flood of people. That's just going to happen. That's just going
It's
to happen.
it's been happening. That's the
It's going to
irony
be
of it.
worse. It's going to be worse, right?
I don't even think that's really the case. Like, if there were a revolution, I think what would happen is the migration flow from Haiti would reverse. I think basically the U.S. is perfectly happy to see migration from Haiti because it provides cheap labor. It's a you can just people who don't have any
Well,
rights. You can
even if it is, it's still a political mess. I mean, the optics of it are really awful for whoever's in power to have this flood of like loads and loads of people showing up on boats, at our border
definitely, but
saying,
it's been that way. It's been that way for like decades and
yeah,
decades.
I just think they think it would get worse. Like so I think in their mind, they're thinking, look, just the status quo is fine. Obviously, for the Haitian people, the status quo is terrible. You can't have people living in Beverly Hills mansions and then the rest of the people trying to get water off the roof. Like that's an untenable situation for the people of Haiti, obviously, to us, to you and me, but it's not obvious to the elites and to the establishment, right? They're sitting there thinking, look, we just need to stabilize the country. That means the status quo remains. Get somebody in power who's friendly to us, who's just going to keep things, the status quo going. Because if they end up with a revolution, they end up with a different economic ideology, very likely with socialism or communism. And two, they end up with potentially civil war that goes out of control and lasts for a long time. Like you mentioned, like the knives could come out between barbecue and these other gang factions, and then who knows how long this lasts, and we end up with floods and floods of immigrants onto our shores. So the problem with that thinking, though, I mean, that's the thinking. This has been the thinking for every single other place that they've ever. It's always just been stabilize and maintain the status quo.
I
Um,
I see the migration issue differently. I think basically the migration issue is caused by not only violence, which is been
yeah,
that
right.
way
That's
way
what
for
people
years,
flee. Sure.
but just from um but from poverty. People who don't have a way to feed their kids or have any kind of decent life, so they're like, well, I'll try to take a boat and get to
Right.
Turks and Caicos and see if I can make my way to the U.S. or wherever else. And so
Right.
because there's no developed economy where people can live decent, but if they had like some not only economy but some like infrastructure, if there was some agriculture, if there was some productive capacity
Well, yeah, but you
in
have to go
the
through the growing
country.
pains to get there. And that is what the neoliberal elites don't want. It is a long, horrible process to turn a country around. It doesn't happen overnight. And it won't happen even in barbecue's lifetime. I mean, realistically, if we're going to be real about it, these countries do not. So let's say he wins, the war that he's got with the elites there. He's not going to stabilize Haiti anytime soon. It's going to take decades for them to stabilize, and it's going to take foreign powers coming in like it did for anybody else, giving money, helping them stabilize. They're stuck with foreign. Just like take your pick on which foreign power when you're in a situation like that. Is it going to be one that supports more socialist movements and ideologies, or is it going to be one that's more neoliberal and that wants to come in and start building, with capitalism and siphoning off resources to the billionaires? I mean, that's a situation that Haiti is in. I mean, the thing I think that most people have to deal with is growing pains. Like, are we going to, as a country, decide, or will our leaders decide? You and I don't have any say. Will our leaders decide to just allow the process to organically happen? and let them go through these growing pains, which are going to take decades and probably civil wars? Or are we going to meddle? And their solution has just been to meddle in order to keep things stable and the status quo going. But again, that status quo is not tenable when people are so poor, right? I mean, it's just totally, how can they keep that going? But I don't know if they have the stomach for it. The problem is that our leaders, most people don't have the stomach for what revolution requires. Growing pains, long, horrible growing pains for decades.
Well, they have to go through of course, a very difficult process. But I mean, I think that's what they're undergoing now, and the only way it gets to that point is, it has to reach certain conditions. Like,
Right,
but Haiti has reached that, where the people are very ready for a revolution because they're like, look, they kidnapped our president twice. They assassinated this president who tried to do something good even within the
right.
confines. Like, we're not allowed to have any kind of, what kind of country is this? And Haitians have a lot of pride in their country because of their history, because they led the world's only, history's only successful slave rebellion. And so that's like in the DNA of every Haitian. So they're not just like resigned, to living in filth and not being able to eat
Right, of
and drink.
course,
They
of
have they
course.
have they have a very, like, strong nationalist kind of liberation ideology in a way. And so there's a lot of potential, and I think that's what, by basically the US carrying out two coups, basically overseeing the assassination of the president, sticking Ariel Henry, who was never elected, in there for so long, that on top of these horrible conditions, they've made it totally ripe for someone like Cherizier to come in and, try to unite, the neighborhoods, the
Right.
masses, and say, like, let's change it. And Cherizier is not, like I said, he's not like, let's burn it all down and start over. He's not like foaming at the mouth. He's like, I'm ready to, like, work with whoever wants to help develop. If the
I mean,
US wants to
pretty
help
much
do,
has to. I
great.
mean, he has no choice but to burn it all down and to rebuild. There's nothing to
I don't know.
save from what they've got right now. I mean, the
I don't
place
think
is
that's
in
necessarily
disarray.
true. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, like, he has studied other revolutions, the Cuban Revolution, the Russian Revolution. I mean, there's not, the what you burn down is like the police station and these kinds of things. You
Well,
take
I mean,
over
the
the key
institutions, like,
infrastructure of the point.
right, they're not gonna be able to, like, restart up with what they don't have, for I just don't think that there's really not much to save. I mean, of course, you're not burning the whole, I don't mean like you burn every building down and all the infrastructure down, of course not, but I don't think there's anything to save within their particular with the current government, with the way they're currently set up. I mean, they probably have to start over.
Oh yeah, you would need a new government, but
Yeah,
there are ministries, so, like, who heads the finance ministry, who runs the economy, who
yeah.
designs the economy, who is the foreign minister, you know what I mean? All of these things, that's where you really change the
Yeah, they're
system.
gonna
And
have
then,
to, but I just don't see the United States going for any of this. I think that, and that's the problem, right? This is what we're seeing online and why we're seeing the backlash against barbecue, right? Calling him a cannibal, saying that he's this bad guy, essentially paving the way for an assassination and getting rid of the guy and putting in whoever it is that the elites want to put in, the establishment, I should say, wants to put in order to stabilize Haiti in the way, but keeping in a way that is not satisfactory to anybody in Haiti, in a way that the keeping the status quo going is just not tenable for these people. So, but that will be the end goal for the United States. So I think, the problem is that we're going to see more smear campaigns against this guy. If he succeeds, things are going to reel into chaos, of course, and then there's going to be continued smear campaigns against him rather than just saying you have to allow the process to happen. You have to allow these growing pains to happen because this is how it happens, and it's not pretty. It's really ugly. It's tough. It's tough, but we have to allow it to happen. I don't see anybody allowing it to happen. I think they're gonna get rid of the guy and they're gonna put in somebody else who's like an Ariel Henry, who they wanna stabilize Haiti to just return it back to the status quo.
well, I don't think the US has it clearly does not have unlimited power. And yes, geographically, Haiti is very close to the U.S., but it is, hey, Cuba is even closer, and they haven't been able to overthrow the Cuban
No, but
Revolution
look
for.
what they've done to Cuba. So, I mean, it's
Sh-
going to be like a Cuba. What they're basically doing to Haiti is saying you're not allowed. You're just not allowed to flourish. We're not going
Oh
to let
yeah,
you flourish because
absolutely. They'll
you're
do everything to undermine and sabotage and try to assassinate if barbecue, gets to that
right
point,
because they see
without a
where it's
doubt.
headed, and where it's headed is socialism. There's no other way. It sounds like with the way Haiti is, there's no other way to do it in the beginning. You have to almost they have to redistribute the wealth. I mean, that's just and that is not a capitalist principle at all, right? That is like something completely different and something that nobody wants to see because then they're worried. It's like the Arab Spring. They're worried like, oh, if it happens one place, then suddenly this like there's fervor in it once and people want it to happen other places and people start to and especially if it goes well, especially if it works, right?
Yeah.
Which
Oh
is so
yeah.
they're hell bent to make sure it never works so that
Yeah. They're
nobody ever says, "Hey, maybe we should try that here because things have gotten really, really imbalanced."
Exactly. They're terrified of a good example, and there's a long history um, of revolutionary activity in the Caribbean. I mean, imagine having Cuba, and then you have, Haiti, in a
Right,
very key political or geopolitical point. You have, of course, Venezuela to the south, and on the other side of the island, you have the Dominican Republic, which, hey, maybe who knows what happens there. And in Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico has been ravaged too by American empire, by neoliberalism, and so there's definitely potential for something to happen there. So, I mean, the I guess the I one of the things I should say that I look at differently than maybe the time of the Cuban Revolution is that was kind of, in many ways getting into that was the American century.
yeah,
Wow, now we're in a totally different time where there are it's not the unipolar world anymore. Like Jovenel Moise was looking to Russia. Maybe barbecue would, say like, hey, China will help me develop this country. Maybe China can help me develop some infrastructure, this kind of thing. I
right,
mean, I'm not saying he's told me that. He hasn't. But, there are other games in town. And
right.
so as the US is not as potent as it once was, which in many ways it is potent. Of course, it's still a massive economy, but it's not the only game in town. And if they can defend themselves, as the Cubans did with the Bay of Pigs
Right.
attack, or these kinds of things, they have a real chance to change history.
Yeah, they can. They certainly can if we stay out of it, but what are the chances the United States stays out of it with a country this close to our shores, with the tide is clear in Haiti, it sounds like, especially with the amount of poverty and the inequality. They're going to have to do wealth redistribution, which is totally anti-capitalism. So they're going to be reeling into some sort of socialist or communist system, which is obvious, and yet our government is like never going to let that happen because they just, I mean, look at what our government does to Cuba. Look at what our government does to any of those countries that even breathe the idea of any sort of socialist, nationalization of resources, taking away from the private companies and bringing them to the people. I mean, that's but I get it now. I think that this has made it, for me at least, and maybe for the people watching, clearer on what the US is. Because it's always kind of been to me like, well, what does the US even give? What do they give a shit about Haiti? Why do they care so much? Like, what is it about Haiti? But now I think what it is it's just the narrative. It's just they can't let Haiti become socialist or communist and allow that so close to the shores and allow that to actually succeed and be better for the Haitian people. They can't let that story have a positive ending at
That's
all.
that's definitely a big part of it. I think
And keeping
there's
China away, because then if they do go in that direction, then maybe they're going to get help from places like China. And the US certainly doesn't want that coming in this close.
I mean, the kind of bifurcation of the global economy is a big part of it, because the US is pulling sweatshops out of China.
Yeah.
And so they want to go back to basically where they were before, where they were in Latin America. And Haiti was the country that they could always exploit the hardest, have the lowest wages in the sweatshops. And so the US rolled out a few years ago something called the Global Fragility Act, which was basically imperialism, but like in this kind of streamlined way where US aid and the Pentagon and the State Department would all work together to, take so-called fragile countries and ensure them. And one of the first one they identified was Haiti, the second one was Libya, and then
Mhm.
they identified several West African countries which are like right next to um Burkina Faso and Niger and all of these countries that last year had popular revolutions. And so like Benin, Ghana, these countries, they've are targets for the Global Fragility Act. So they're very worried there. So same with Haiti. So the Global Fragility Act, part of that is basically we need to ensure control of our neo colonies, Haiti being one of them, because we're pulling our businesses out of China, and we need to be able to produce materials there
Right.
for cheap. So yeah, there are a number of reasons. Definitely just the what you said, the kind of ideological showing that there can be an alternative to living under the boot of the US, that oh my god, having twin revolutionary countries in Cuba and Haiti and
Yeah.
uniting those, and then Venezuela, that's like terrifying. And
Right.
then of course it's all related on the geopolitical, chessboard. So if you move one, well, what happens to the others? Can there be
Right.
some kind of, so no, without a doubt, I mean, they're very, very worried. But the other thing is the US is overextended in other parts of the world, of
Sure.
course, in
Yeah.
Ukraine, in Gaza. So it's like, how many places can it basically launch wars at? And the Sauron's eye of the US propaganda machine can really only focus on one thing at once. So,
Right.
you
I
know,
mean, I don't think there's a giant risk right now of the US actually going into Haiti. I mean, of course, it could get to that, but it would be a very I think that in their minds, it would be a very quick operation to stabilize, a couple of days or weeks, and then
they
that's
want it to
it.
be 10 years. They're the documents they put out publicly that's part of the Global Fragility Act. They talk about a 10-year occupation of
Ugh.
Haiti.
I
So
mean,
no, they want
that would be a death sentence to any of our leaders. I mean, just like with all the other issues to suddenly send in troops. But I do think they would assassinate and they would coup and they would continue to back people that they like and and allow Haiti to continue to be unstable in the way that it is. So as long as it doesn't reel into socialism or communism, but it sounds to me, look like there's an appetite in the global South for a different economic system, and we fight hell. We're like hell bent on stopping it and not even allowing them the chance to try, without us meddling and making it for sure a failure or just like a complete chaos. And I think that's the biggest tragedy of this is just like let the Haitians do what they want to do. Like let's just not meddle. And if they want to have a different economic system, let's just let them. Why do we have to get involved? Hey guys, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you like this segment. Now, you might be wondering, this seems like it's part of a bigger show. You're right, it is. The full show is at KimIversonShow.com. So, what you're watching is just a clip. And if you want to get the full experience, then you got to go to KimIversonShow.com. The show airs Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. That is where you can watch the full show. Here, you just get clips. So, click on the link down below, go to the full show, enjoy. Otherwise, I'll see you next time right here. And be sure, once again, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.